Hello again, YouTubers, on SpongeBob 101 back here again on the SpongeBob channel with a SpongeBob episode review. It's been a long time since we did one of these. In this one, we will be reviewing episode 302 to 303, Kreepaway Kamp. The synopsis states, while at Kamp Koral for a reunion, SpongeBob and the gang are stalked by a mysterious figure lurking in the shadows as campers start disappearing one by one. Ooh, very horrifying. Without further ado, let's dive right in. The episode starts off at a spooky cabin in the woods with a mysterious figure writing a letter to Patrick and sending it off with a carrier clam. So far, loving the horror vibe. Back in Bikini Bottom, Patrick mistakes the letter for breakfast, totally expected, and he gets SpongeBob's help to open it using a rather ghoulish looking paper cutter. I thought it was a weird way to start since we've gotten already plenty of Patrick Star centric content airtime in the Patrick Star show, but oh well. They open their respective letters. SpongeBob gets his old Kamp Koral neckerchief, while Patrick gets a very gross pair of his old underpants. They visit Sandy to see if she has deciphered the reason why they're getting stuff. We get snippets of the other characters receiving similar letters as well, getting items that remind them of Kamp Koral. Then we go over to Mr. Krabs. Mr. Krabs is hesitant to go to the reunion as he shut down the place to avoid all the health code violations, but is then tempted to go because he's lured with finding his lost Camp Nickel stash, which is weird. I mean, why would you do that? But anyways, Mr. Krabs loves money. SpongeBob, Patrick, and Sandy decide to prance over to camp, but their nonsense is cut short as Mr. Krabs shows up with a bus driven by Mrs. Puff. Of course, having everyone, even Tall-Tail, who is chasing after the bus for a couple moments, in one place, again, really brings back memories for SpongeBob. But no one there actually sent out the invite, so who did? Talk about story development. They arrive at Kamp Koral and realize it is in a completely dilapidated state. Mr. Krabs immediately sneaks off to go treasure hunting, while the rest suspect that the whole thing is a prank. They decide to leave, only for the bus to get destroyed, the bridge and tunnel to be blown, and even the hot air balloon popped. I guess they're really not leaving now. This scene was for a totally convenient plot point since they need to be trapped there for the story to progress. Lady Upturn orders Reggie Guild to come over with a chopper, but before they can make their hasty escape, everyone tries to pile on and ruins Lady Upturn's third favorite helicopter by crashing it. Patrick even gets one of the blades of the helicopter stuck into him. Pain is certainly a running thing in SpongeBob. Apparently, the cabins are like live animals because one moved when Mr. Krabs told him to get out of his path on the way to his treasure. Mr. Krabs' disappearance is noticed, but what no one expects is that he immediately gets pulled into his old treasure chest. With the demeanor of the camp creeper, you'd think it has to be someone who actually has nefarious intentions, which, spoiler alert, is not exactly true. Nurse Helga crashes into the scene with her motorbike and immediately quote-unquote helps Patrick with his injury. Really love the reunion of the characters, just like in the old days of Kamp Koral. SpongeBob is really excited, but the rest, not so much. We do have a musical note before everyone splits up, visiting their old cabins, and this is where the abductions totally ramp up. Upturn, Rhea, and Ro are outraged at their shanty-looking cabin and are quickly abducted through the couch and clock. I don't know how they are even getting dragged into things like that. I guess the perpetrator has been creating secret passages throughout the camp. Nurse Helga is abducted after she realizes her tools of the trade have disappeared. Bubble Bass, Harvey, and Kevin try to do an improvised zipline thing, and that doesn't turn out well. They fall into the lake, and Bubble Bass essentially breaks his butt, without saying that he breaks his butt, and Kevin gets abducted. So we then flash over to Plankton and Karen. You thought they missed out on that reunion. No, they did not. Well, they're dumping an expired chum into Lake Yucky Muck, and he is utterly scared out of his wits when Patrick, SpongeBob, and Sandy show up. Sandy demands that Plankton cook them up some grub again, and he begrudgingly agrees so that they don't rat him out. Of course, he's serving chum, which totally turns everyone off. The anchovies run to the outhouse to puke, only to be pulled in it. I do not know what's more horrifying, getting abducted or getting pulled into a toilet. Ew. Meanwhile, most of the campers run off to play volleyball, while Bubble Bass runs up to get a shower after staining his shirt. You know what's gonna happen, right? He's totally gonna get abducted. Of course, he feels someone brushing his back while showering, which is pretty inappropriate, but what's worse is he totally freaks out because he's becoming too clean. what? So he faints and then is dragged off by the creeper. So that was a weird one, to be honest. Back at the volleyball court, the jocks are facing off against the Dingies, and Pearl is cheerleading. Finally, I always thought cheerleading was one of Pearl's most significant characteristics, so to actually see her doing that right now, or in this episode, was a very nice touch. Patrick serves up the ball in pretty hilarious ways, and the ball keeps flying off court each time a new jock is abducted, and SpongeBob and the gang finally see it with their own eyes. So the next scene takes place at a campfire in the woods. They are discussing what was going on here. So Harvey shares a couple of rules to surviving horror. Number 1, don't go off alone. Number 2, don't say I'll be right back. And number 3, no canoodling. Okay? Plankton boasts that nothing will scare him, only to be proven completely wrong by Karen. After a laugh, Plankton and Karen go canoodling while Patrick eats a flaming pine cone. Like, seriously, man. I mean, the gags in this episode are a bit weirder just because they're not supposed to be funny because of, how serious this is. For some reason, they decide to tell scary stories and then decide to retreat to the dingy cabin while Mrs. Puff goes off to search for Plankton and Karen, breaking Harvey's rules immediately. The dingy cabin is completely falling apart and infested with urchins who make a beeline for the exit. Meanwhile, as you would have expected, Karen, Plankton, and Mrs. Puff are abducted in the woods. The scary stories continue in the cabin, and they suddenly hear clarinet noises and decide to take a stand and fight back, beating the living daylights out of who they believe is the creeper. It turns out actually to be Squidward. In fact, Patrick literally dumps a safe on Squidward. I want to know where he got that, okay? Turns out he's been vacationing at a camp for a week after he was banned from playing clarinet in Bikini Bottom, and no one even noticed. He didn't even actually get an invite. Squidward just decides to leave with the floorboard slamming against him as it always did back in Kamp Koral. Patrick freaks out and starts vanishing before SpongeBob helps him materialize. Cool one, I guess. Harvey gets abducted soon after, followed by Squidward, who drops his clarinet on the ground. SpongeBob, Patrick, Sandy, and Pearl find a snail playing that same clarinet before Patrick safeguards it with his butt. As Sandy says, I don't think Squidward wants that back. Pearl is abducted before they go over to the trawler cabin, where they encounter Big and Little Roxy, Predatory, Nosferatu, and Jimmy Blobfish. It was a rather gross sight to see Patrick making himself a makeshift ice cream out of Jimmy's slime. Regardless, upon hearing about the creeper, the trawlers actually want to get abducted, and they do. Sandy then suspects that the creeper is either Narlene or Nobby, given their history of pranking, so they decide to ambush them. Sandy then gives Patrick a good beating for trying to eat her tail. Now, I gotta give Patrick this, at least it makes sense because they've just been running around, no one's making food for them, so it makes sense that Patrick is genuinely hungry this time. The plan backfires, but at least they get some allies. Grown-up Nobby's a real hoot with his fancy language. They try to catch the creeper, but Patrick, Nobby, and Narlene are all trapped, each by the sandwich, sugar squeeze, and the underground tree stump system, respectively. At least we now know that there is an underground tunnel system throughout the camp. Or actually, we kind of did know how it worked back in the series, but Narlene confirms it herself, okay? Still doesn't explain how the creeper is abducting the characters from all different directions. What, has he been spending years upon years, expanding that tunnel system? Sandy is confronted by the creeper and tries to escape, but is captured. She tries to escape by inflating her suit, which just doesn't work anyway, but okay. This is when the identity of the creeper is finally revealed. She's taken to the Clamphy Theater, and when asked why he is doing this, he being the creeper responds with, quote unquote, because this is fun. The creeper is none other than Elwood. Turns out he missed the last bus out of camp back all those years ago and just stuck around. He apparently wanted to have a reunion so everyone could play forever. First of all, why does he still sound like a kid? And 2, forever? That's not nice. Clearly staying at camp for his entire life since then made him not learn much social skills. He quote-unquote lets Sandy join all her friends before storming off to fetch SpongeBob. I still don't get why he needs to approach people in such a menacing manner. Really? SpongeBob gets tripped up by the same rock monster from the very first Kamp Koral episode before being dragged off. Along the way, we see a destroyed bus, boatmobiles, and even the Bikini Bottom news chopper all destroyed. Elwood needs re-education. This is probably where the horror ends, because SpongeBob sees all of his friends covered in a red substance and thinks they're all dead. Turns out they were just having a catch-up fight. So finally, okay, we get to see the start of the party. Yeah, it turns out Elwood used Mr. Krabs' treasure stash to pay for all of this. SpongeBob, Patrick, and Sandy sing the Kamp Koral theme with the Trawler Band. I really enjoy this celebration. In a way, it could be thought of as the true ending of the Kamp Koral series. Having cameos of so many Kamp characters was amazing. It is a downer that the villain turned out to just be a little bit, or to be more specific, quite misguided. Elwood could have left all of these years. The bridge was there, you know, he could have just walked. Come on. But he didn't. The episode ends with the line, "Aren't friends the real treasure?" to Mr. Krabs' horror. That was a real doozy. The plot gets 9 out of 10 from me. I really enjoyed the horror element mixed with the theme of reuniting all of the Kamp Koral characters, except Gary. Like, they missed out on him, man. There were so many fun lines and interesting ways in which the story progressed. One by one, each of the characters were disappearing, and we didn't actually get to see the whole thing because other characters like Perch Perkins, they were there at the end, and we didn't get to see him get abducted, right? Nonetheless, everything came together in the end, and I loved it. I hope Elwood gets reintegrated into society. Perhaps he'll cameo in some future non-camp related episodes. For the episode, I just didn't laugh that much, so maybe a little bit more humor would have been nice, but okay, it's a horror-themed episode. You can't have humor there. Animation gets a 10 out of 10. Over 43 minutes of awesomeness. The detail of the environments all being dilapidated and all that, plus the characters, what they were doing. Patrick in particular got a whole lot of weird expressions that go with his lines, generally from the Narline and Nobby decoy scare to the horrifying creeper. This episode was animated really, really well. Unique characteristics gets 10 out of 10. I was always wondering how the Kamp Koral series would be fully integrated into the lore of the main show. And this, on paper, does seem a little bit strange because it's kind of a spooky season themed episode. But having watched the episode now and understanding the motivations behind it, it does make a whole lot of sense. And I really appreciated the path they actually took. The final product is really fantastic. I'm guessing there will be more intra-SpongeBob universe crossovers of varying magnitudes in the future, but for what it's worth right now, it's a really unique one, sort of the unofficial ending to the Kamp Koral series. So putting it all together, Kreepaway Kamp gets 29 out of 30 from me. But now it's over to you. What did you think about this episode? Let me know in the comments, and make sure to subscribe. I'll see you guys again in the next SpongeBob video. Maybe it's a review. I have stopped doing reviews for quite a long while, but I may start doing them again for significant SpongeBob episodes. Anyways, that's all for this one. I'll see you guys next time. Bye!